Hey, welcome to Striving Artist. I'm your host, Arlene, and I'm here at First and Last Coffee. I'm very excited to have my friend Cassie Cao to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I am so excited because I saw Cassie in the beginning of her journey. And what is her journey? She's a full-time comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so you've been full-time for a couple of years now.
Yes, today is my 2-year quit-anniversary. Yes, it's been 2 years since I've left my day job and just trying to make it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so for our audience, if you're just joining us, the show is all about talking to professional artists, striving artists that are making a living off of their art. So I want to find out, I like to ask the question of like, how did you come from a part-time comedian to now this is your full-time thing?
Yeah, when I started doing comedy, I started taking classes at the Second City, and it was not even part-time, like I was paying to do comedy, and I had a full day job. I was an economist. At the time that I started doing comedy, I was working at the Bank of Canada, and I was fully on my path, and I never thought that it would become a career. I didn't even know you could make money off of it, which turns out there's not a lot of it in it still, but
right.
still. But I just I got into the community, and to be fair, I did it quite slowly, I think. I did many years of improv, and then I went into stand-up a little bit, and at certain points I stopped doing it entirely when I was focusing on my job sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a full year after I finished my master's that I just worked and I didn't do any comedy.
Okay.
It was many years before all things kind of came together and
right.
I was able to quit my job, yeah.
So has it been something that you've kind of been dabbling into as you were growing up, or it kind of like you stumbled upon it, or you're just like, oh, I kind of want to try that?
Yeah, no, not at all. I didn't even know about stand-up comedy because I grew up in an immigrant family. We didn't watch that much television.
Right.
I didn't know stand-up comedy was a thing. We don't have stand-up in China. That's not my parents. There's no word for it in Chinese.
Okay.
I tried to explain it to my parents.
That's adorable.
But the first time I even saw stand-up comedy, I was already in university, and absolutely, I'd never thought that would be a real job. You know. So I guess I moved to Toronto to do the Second City, and I had heard about the Second City because I read Tina Fey's book at the time when Tina Fey was really huge.
Yeah.
I read her autobiography, and she was talking about how great comedy made her life, and I just really bought into it. And I found out there was a Second City here, so I moved here to do that. Obviously I got a job in Toronto, right. And then I did it.
Cool.
And that's how I got into comedy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Now you mentioned you obviously have immigrant parents. A lot of our viewers might also have, the dream of being a creative person, and then we have the whole thing of get a real job. Not speaking only for myself, but for other viewers out there. Has that been your experience? Have you had something different where your parents are also supportive of what you're doing now? And how do you handle it?
I will say I think it was really difficult for them to understand what it was. Right. My parents always encouraged me to be creative. Since I was really young, I always played music, and I painted, and I drew, and I did all those things. But it was very obvious that those were hobbies that I did, that were extracurriculars. So when I started doing comedy and stuff, I don't even know if I specifically told them about it, but that was never an issue, I guess.
Right.
I guess it was only when I fully quit my job that my parents were very surprised about it. Also, the way that I quit my job was also a little, it wasn't I got a TV show and I quit my job. So I wasn't jumping from one thing to another thing. When I did leave my full-time day job, I had nothing going on in comedy. I was doing open mics, but I wasn't making money off of comedy. So I do think during that transition period, they were very worried about it.
Right.
And they didn't know that I could get into something that was sustainable.
Right.
But over the years, especially as I've gotten more success doing what I'm doing, and even so, it's been relatively quick, it's been 2 years, they've now started to get on board, and they've been able to find the parts that they see as more valuable.
Oh, good.
And so my parents are able to be more supportive in certain ways more than in others, but that's human. It's of what they can understand.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And not only do you do stand-up comedy, now you're writing.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that? You recently just wrote for a awesome Canadian comedy. Tell us how much work you have to put into that.
Yeah, I just came off of doing a couple weeks writing on Kim's Convenience, which was such an honor to be part of that writing room. It's one of the biggest shows in Canada right now, and I was invited to be in the room, I think partly because some of the people involved in the show knew of me from doing stand-up, which is very flattering.
Cool.
And I was just really thrilled to be there. I do writing on my own, like I write my own stand-up and spec scripts and things like that, but I've never been part of a live like production room before.
Right.
So it was just very humbling, but also overwhelming, I think, to be involved in the room and see what's happening, because I wasn't specifically there I was there just to observe the room, but the room was already operating. Like they have a schedule to follow, and they're already just going and producing the next season. So I really got in and just like had to absorb everything as it was happening on pace. Like no one was slowing down to explain to me what was happening, you know?
Oh, okay.
The days are really long. They're really gruesome. I think I have a lot of respect for TV writers. They work so hard, because sometimes you think about it, if you don't know, you think, oh, these comedy writers are just like, you know, joking and having a great time and eating sandwiches. I don't know. But really, they keep a really strict schedule. We work so hard. You're just pitching the whole day.
Right.
And it's just a full 9 hours of conceptualizing every single funny thing that could be happening to these characters.
Wow. Like Monday to Friday, 9 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was 9 to 6. It was a lot.
That's crazy. That's really cool, though.
Yeah, I was exhausted after doing it.
I bet. And does it help, like, because you wrote on your own, and that's like collaborative. Like, have you taken things away from both, or like, would you prefer one over the other, or it depends?
Well, I guess the one difference is the things that I write on my own. Like, you worked on my web series a few years ago. Like, most of the projects I work on for me are my projects, and so I'm the boss of the project.
Yeah.
Whereas working on Kim's, I'm the smallest pawn in that big machine. So I do think that there's a difference in terms of how to interact with other people in a collaborative space, and giving like authority to other people and deferring to other people's expertise if you're not the one making the decisions, which I think can be hard in a field where almost everything I built for myself has been off of my instincts. But it's been a really great learning experience to kind of like let go and follow what everyone else is doing, and see how other people do other things, and figure out how the rest of the industry works. And that also helps me with how I think about my own projects now.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And in terms of your own stuff, like for those that are, you know, seeking a career in comedy, how do you go about networking, or how do you go about finding your gigs?
Oh, that's so interesting. So I guess to define like being a comedian, my calling card is people often know me as a stand-up comedian, but in reality I do many other things. Like I write, I act, I produce, and all of those things. And I do think if you're a self-employed artist, especially in Canada, you have to do a little bit of everything. You can't. It's not possible to do just one thing. Right,
and it all comes down, like it's like pretty much comedy's your tree, and then it branches off to different things.
Yes.
Because I did see Cassie in Tall Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another CBC
yeah, actually,
show.
I tend to do actually more acting than almost everything else. Like, even though people know me as a stand-up because I'm on stage a lot, like a lot of the work and money that I make is actually through acting.
But it's comedic, because the stuff that I've seen has that element in it.
Yeah, well, I guess I like to think of it as everything that I want to do has a comedic like angle to it, or like a root to it. But a lot of the work just comes from doing other work, to be honest. There are some things that I seek out for myself. Like, I think it's a field where you have to be really self-motivated. So a lot of projects I just create because I think they're interesting things to do. Cool. And then you do them, and then as you're doing them, you go, oh, I could use help on here, or I could use another person's advice on this, and then that generates like a reason to talk to people in the community and to make peers, right? Like when I was making that web series and I was like, I guess we should have music. Then I went and sought out a musician.
That's true.
That tends to be how that works out.
That's cool. Yeah. So that's a great tip for our striving artists out there, is to, when you're creating something, you basically figure it out on the way.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I think what you've done is you've taken the idea and been like, okay, I want to do this, and then I need this and this and this. Whereas some people might want to just have everything in place before they start, right? So,
right.
And how about upcoming projects? What's up for you?
I guess I have a few things on the go. It's always hard to talk about those things, right? Because first of all, anything could happen at any moment that would change everything.
Yeah.
So I never really know what I'm concretely doing more than a couple months out. But in the new year, I have a few things that I'm personally focusing on. I want to do a lot more writing. So I've already been submitting to different writing rooms and things, but I'm also creating my own projects and pitching them. So I actually just wrote, I've just been developing a show about my time in university. It's not really biographical, but it's based on some of my life experiences in university, and I've been pitching that out, and so there'll be some production companies that I'm going to meet with in the new year to see if we could develop it into anything. Often these things don't come to anything, but also some of them have to, you know?
Right.
So I'm working on that. I also just got into the Winnipeg Fringe Festival for 2020. I'm very excited. I've never done a Fringe show before.
Right.
Originally, I wanted to just do stand-up there, but I wanted to challenge myself a little bit and write something specifically for the Fringe. And a lot of my friends have done really beautiful one-person shows and storytelling shows and like things that are a little bit more theatrical, I would say, which I've never really dabbled into. I came straight from before being an economist and then straight into stand-up, so I don't really have a lot of that background. So I'm hoping to create a one-woman show.
Cool.
And my idea, we'll see if this pans out, but but my idea is actually to write a show that is at the intersection of economics and comedy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I want to write an econ-based comedy
That's
show.
hilarious.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll work out.
What I like about our conversations, you're showing us, like, you have all these ideas and you go after them, even if you're not sure of like where to go. What I think is important from your lesson is basically just asking experts to help you.
Yeah.
And that's what you did, especially, so Cassie did a web series.
Yeah.
And you got me to do the music, which, thank you for doing that.
Oh my gosh, thank you for doing it.
But you also got like people to edit it and like just by asking.
Yeah, looking back on that project now, I think it's so wild because at the time I hadn't even really done a lot of stand-up yet.
Right.
I was nowhere close to being a full-time comedian, and now I look back on it and I'm like, I can't believe that I had the audacity to just produce an entire web series. Like now when I think about doing a web series, I'm like, I don't even know if I can. It's like such an endeavor.
Wow.
But it's so, there is something to the idea that if you don't know how to do it, you kind of don't know how hard it is. So you just go ahead. You just overestimate how easy it is.
That's funny. I love it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds also like that you love it so much, like you found your calling, obviously. Now,
oh, thank you.
I think you have.
I also will say my philosophy on it a lot is that I had a really great career and I quit to do comedy. And especially when I decided to do that, it was also a timing thing. Like I wanted to do it while I was still young enough to be able to have to maximize like my opportunities.
Right.
And so I don't like to sit around and waste that time.
Right.
Especially if I could have been like continuing on in my economics career. So I don't like to think of it as like anything is too scary or like not doable, because I'll just do them and at some point someone will tell me if they're not doable. I don't like to be the one to tell myself to not be able
That's amazing.
to. So usually I just go, what's a cool thing that I would want to do that I quit my job to do?
Right.
And then I'll try it.
Wow.
And I figure at best it won't work, and then at least I'll try it.
That's awesome. I like that mentality a lot. Like, what is something I can do that I quit my job to do?
Yeah, well, I always think, especially the thing is I really did like my job.
Right.
I just thought this would be a cool opportunity to explore, and that opportunity presented itself to me at the time. But I'm also very aware at any moment I could have to go back to my old career or go get a regular Joe job, or anything might happen. So I always like to think, well, how do I want to be living my life as optimally as I can every day?
Aww, I love that. I think that's a great time to end. A great thought to end with. Thank you so much for your time, Cassie.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I'm very excited to see where you're headed, and if you're in Winnipeg, make sure you go to Fringe and see Cassie over there. But thank you, and thank you to First and Last, and make sure you guys stick around. I've got that special surprise for you right after this.